Hi, I'm Matt Tinkler. Do you recall seeing strange clouds in the night sky? Do you remember hearing the howls of beasts at night? No? Good. Everything happens for a reason.
The legends you knew, learned and acknowledged are significantly different in person. Dragons write books holding spells from humanity. Demons are forced in exile where your heroes fall, and even the people you knew are drafted into a battle of slavery and insanity. The fate of the city is held within inside this book. A battle between demons, martial arts and knowledge clash in a bloody conflict. How will it end? Will the city burn? Or will it be saved by a group of unlikely heroes? I'm Matt Tinkler. Pick up the adventure-born Tombland today.
Houston comes along. And next up tonight, I'm going to be joined by an author, Matt Tinkler. Now, Matt got in touch with Upload all about his book Tombland, which is inspired by Norwich and has a sprinkling of folklore and mythology added in as well. And we're going to get a reading from that book in just a few minutes. But first, I think it's only right to meet Matt and find out more. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello, that was a lovely greeting. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
Yeah, really great, thanks. I'm excited to hear this reading of Tombland. I guess my first question is, have you always been writing? Have you always been an author? How did that start?
Well, I actually started when I was 17 with a short story about Vietnam veterans who bumped into a gateway into hell. I won't go too much into detail about because I actually deleted it.
Okay.
And then, a couple of years later, I've just done a couple of fan fiction things and, really enjoyed doing that and essentially made them almost interactive. And then I started working on Tombland.
Amazing. Can I ask how old you are now?
26.
26, and an author. That's incredible. So tell me a bit. Obviously, it's inspired by Norwich. We get that from the name, Tombland. But what's the book about?
The book is about a young man, the main character of the books, who becomes a humble god of knowledge and rage, or more commonly known in the book's universe, part of the adventure board. The story includes mystery, following the desire to know about a mysterious amulet made of bronze and jade, found in the river Yard just outside Norwich. Adventure, witnessing the main character and others explore new, intriguing places, some influenced by areas of mythology and history. Horror, family tracing back and tragic disaster, history, legends, mythology, with historical buildings and now ancient historical figures from the city of Norwich. What else is there? There's a lot
Matt,
that goes on.
That is a pretty incredible sum up. Unfortunately, the line is dodgy at best. If you wouldn't mind, maybe, I don't know if you can, move somewhere where you have a little bit more signal. That would be incredible, unless you're, I don't know, on a landline phone stuck in the same place. That would be more difficult. But yeah, I think we got the general gist of it. So the Norwich part of it, why did you want to write a book inspired by Norwich?
Well, Norwich was a big thing for me because I couldn't find any action adventure fiction anywhere. So I tied everything I loved together, researched and planned in my spare time, and 3 years later, with great struggle and dawning of the coronavirus, finished it.
Amazing. We are slightly struggling with this line, so what I think I might do, Matt, if it's all right with you, is play the extract that you've recorded us from Tombland, and maybe we'll get you on the back of it and have a little bit more of a chat, and hopefully we'll have secured a better line. Does that sound all right to you?
Hopefully, and not a problem at all.
Amazing. Matt, here we go then. So this is an extract of Chapter 9 from Tombland. This is your book.
Oh, thank you.
Chapter 19. My professional opinion. The sun shined over the city's roofs, and through the curtains, the door banged loudly in the hotel room, awakening Matt and Ryan. Matt swiped the saliva from his face and stepped up to the door. Ryan climbed out of bed, watching Matt as he opened the door. Be careful. Matt looked back as he popped the handle of the door. Don't be stupid. The door opened, and Ray stood at the doorway. So have you two decided on what the final link is? Matt closed the door, and Ryan replied, doing up his shirt. Nope. I think we just drew ourselves into paranoia, then passed out. Matt shook his head, walking past Ray toward the table. Ryan got paranoid. I continued looking. I drew a copy of the map, and that's as far as I got. Ray stepped up to the table. His old eyes stared at the paper. Why did you draw a kite in the middle? Matt looked down. I didn't. Or did I? I don't know, would be my answer. Upon grabbing the paper to screw up, Matt caught the glimpse of the paper over the map. The places were drawn exactly in place, and in the symmetrical kite's central point, with perfectly straight lines, landed on an old landmark close to where Matt was before. Ray raised his eyebrows as he realised. So the map is technically telling us to watch a movie at the Norwich cinema? Alright, this is a joke now. Ray attempted to grab the paper, but Matt stopped Ray's swooping hand, explaining, No. The kite is pointing to St. Andrew's Church. I walked past it yesterday. It's not too far. Ryan peered over the table. Anyone else got any ideas? Matt and Ray shook their heads with their eyebrows raised as they stared at the paper map. Upon realising that the two had no other options, Ryan clapped his hands. Right. Let's go, gents. Shortly after, the three were heading down St. Andrew's Street toward the church, and as they approached, they realised how dark it was inside through the stained glass windows. People passed by, almost oblivious to the three, as they all stared up to the giant bell tower. Ryan scratched his face. You reckon anyone is there? Matt looked at Ryan and laughed. I don't know. Go knock and ask. The three pushed through the small archway that leads to the church's grounds. They stepped up the path and knocked on the door. The door was dense and strong, deadening their knocks. After a couple of minutes of knocking, Matt stepped back to look up the bell tower where the door stood under. The sun reflected off parts of the glass, but then something caught his sight. A stone gargoyle above the door had been broken off and missing. Matt tapped Ryan's shoulder as he looked up. Do you know anything about that? Ryan shook his head as Ray banged on the door again with his hand. No idea. There is no documents in this church's history anywhere from what I know of. Ryan and Matt stared up as Ray walked away from the door. Matt shielded his eyes from the sun and asked again. Do you reckon there is another door we can get in? Ryan looked at Matt. Maybe. We could have a look. Before the two had decided on what to do, Ray had lost his patience and took a long run at the door. Ryan and Matt noticed Ray running toward the door and witnessed him collide into the old wood, using his shoulder. Ray slammed into the wooden door as pain shot his right side. With a shout, Ray fell to the floor holding his shoulder. Young teenage girls giggled and laughed as they passed by next to them. Matt and Ryan looked at each other and then helped Ray up off the floor. They grabbed him, dragged him away from the door, and proceeded to pick him up facing away from the door. Matt grabbed his jacket and lifted him to his feet. What were you doing? We've not got time to take you to the hospital. Ryan straightened Ray's jacket as he spoke to him. Look, that was brave, but you are frail. One more thing like that, and you could have been in trouble. Ray laughed, holding his shoulder, looking to the door. I may be frail, but it seems that Locks have seen better days. Ryan and Matt turned around slowly to see the door slightly ajar. The crack in the door showed no signs of light. It was pitch black among a bright sunny day. Something was off about the place as slowly Matt, Ray and Ryan stepped into the dusty church. A scraping could be heard among the darkness, and an orange glow flickered in the far reaches of the church. Matt looked back to Ryan, whispering to them both, Stay quiet. A loud thud thundered through the church, and the three stopped in their tracks. Their eyes were completely open, trying to see in the shadows of the church. Ray stood behind Ryan and Matt. He looked on into the church and thought nothing of it. He breathed in heavily and spoke. Hello? Matt and Ryan turned around to Ray with anger in their faces. Matt whispered angrily, You idiot! We could get arrested for this! A loud thud and a long scratching appeared in the distance around the corner where an archway of sorts stood, and slowly the scratching got louder. The three darted to pillars that supported the roof, hiding behind them. Slowly, a short, narrow snout peered from round the corner of the archway. It was reptilian in nature, with a green eye that stayed the same no matter what light it looked into. Underneath its nostrils, a long moustache grew, hanging round and down next to the creature's jaw, looking like an old wise kung fu master. Its eyebrows were slanted, and it sported long lime green horns on its head protruding upward. It breathed in heavily as Matt watched from around the pillar. It clearly had poor vision as it would stare in his direction and not react. Matt feared for his life. His heart was pounding, and for once, he felt completely hopeless among the creature's presence. The creature breathed out as if to sigh, and retracted his head back into the archway in the back of the church. Matt looked away from the creature and looked to Ryan and Ray. Ryan was gripping the pillar, facing away with his teeth gritted as Ray kneeled on the floor beneath him. Matt put his thumb up to the other two. They responded by nodding, and after Ryan broke away from the pillar, they began to move down the church, sticking to the right side. They hugged the wall, moving toward a door that was next to the archway. They moved slowly, trying not to kick up dust and debris, and eventually, after shuffling for a while in line, Ryan grabbed the round door handle. He began to count down on his fingers from 3, and once, 2, 1, he pulled the door open quickly. A loud creak echoed through the church. Matt and Ryan began to pile into the doorway as fast as they could, but their efforts were stopped suddenly by realization. The door led directly to where the creature was. The two froze as they stared at it. His eyes darted back and forth, staring to the two. He stood twice as tall as a man, barely visible by 3 torches that burned next to a stone slab. He stood behind the slab table, curled up in the corner, surrounded by crude leather-covered books and wooden bookshelves. It held a long piece of wood burnt on the end between its clawed fingers, and it stared at them with no patience in its eyes. Its folded leathery wings, long tail and 4 stubby limbs with a green, purple, black and red scaled skin made it obvious to the 3 what it was. It was a dragon. In a nervous outburst, Ryan smiled, waved at the dragon and greeted it verbally with fear in its voice. "Hello!" The dragon closed its eyes, breathed in and bellowed to the two in the doorway. Its voice was powerful but clear as day, like an angry father yelling to misbehaving children. "What do you want?" In a panic, the 3 began to dart to the main door. Ray, being considerably slower, tried his hardest to keep up along the dusty church floor as the other 2 sped ahead of him toward the inner church doors that were left slightly open. A rush of wind was left behind. Dust and small pieces of paper were blown towards the doors ahead of them, and suddenly the right side of the room was completely black. A thud echoed through the church as the dragon plodded onto the floor in front of the doors. Skidding along the slabs, it stared at the 3, showing its magnificent scales and impressive size. Snarling, it flicked from Ryan to Matt to Ray. The dragon jolted back, flicking its tail. The seemingly barbed tail slammed the wood of the door, closing the inner doors. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, and it bellowed to the 3 again. "I guess humans have forgotten how to knock." Its voice echoed through the silent church as Matt stood, shaking anxiously as the dragon waited a response. The dragon smiled, its teeth appearing yellow in the darkness. "No words? For a species willing to do anything for attention, surely one thing you could do is talk." The dragon lowered its head down, and like a snake its head swayed side to side as it closed in up to Ryan. It stopped, its hot breath flowing past Ryan's body. It spoke loudly, echoing through the hall. "I guess, judging by this one's haircut, you are part of the European monster hunters." It turned its head away from Ryan to face Matt, its teeth baring and growling. Its forward-facing eyes flicked up and down as it got steadily closer, almost hovering. It spoke with a menacing tone. "Say, boy, you brave, you strong. You ready to die for your cause?" Matt turned to face the dragon head on. Surprised, the dragon reared its head up, looking down onto Matt. "You truly are fools. Say, who sent you?" Ray replied, leaning next to a pillar, supporting his weight with one hand. "We sent ourselves." The dragon darted its head to Ray and smashed through the pile of wooden stands. It snarled as it stared closely. "You expect me to believe that? I've seen my brothers and sisters die one by one at the hands of misguided humans. Now you've come to finish the job." Matt shouted to the creature. "You cannot be more wrong. We are treasure seekers." Ray noticed his shoe on his right foot was loose, and while Matt and the dragon spoke, he kneeled down to retie the lace. The dragon slammed its claws, forelimbs into the floor. "So you are thieves now. You are assassins. You think I don't know what is going on outside? I am the keeper of the peace. I will rid of you once again and get back to what I was doing. I've much to prepare for." The dragon lunged towards Ray's position with its jaws open. The dragon slammed its jaws above Ray's head. Its eyes opened as it looked back and forth in confusion. Ray stared upward, holding the laces of his shoes. By the time the dragon began to retract its head, Ryan and Matt had picked up a small wooden stool, and together they threw it at the creature's head. The stool slowly twirled through the air. The dragon turned its head to face back to the other 2, and the old wood stool shattered onto its armoured face. The dragon reared back, and with a thunderous roar, the dragon slammed its tail onto the floor, cracking stone floor slabs beneath it. With the slam, Matt and Ryan were propelled into the air by the shock wave, bouncing into the brick wall next to the small door where the dragon laid. The dragon looked down toward where Ray had ducked, it ready to bite again, snarling over the stalls, but Ray was gone. Confused, it raised its head high.
Old man, I smell you.
Ooh, Fism at the end there. That is an extract from Tombland, which is a book by Matt Tinkler, uploaded to us here at BBC Upload. Matt's with us. Hi, Matt.
Hello.
That was lovely to hear. Thank you so much for sending that in and recording it. And how was it for you, the recording process of something that you'd written?
That was quite tricky, really. I had to find a microphone from somewhere, but it's trying to match all the voices all the time as well. It's a bit tricky half the time.
I bet though. Well, you tell me. I've never written a book. I'm not an author. But when you are writing, are those voices already in your head before you've ever been asked to record it at any point?
Absolutely, yeah. I was just thinking what characters look like and mainly ages. Like if it's an older gentleman, I'll try to give him more of a gruff, throaty voice, or if they're younger or a bit naive, I'll make them seem a bit harmless.
Yeah. Can you give us some tips for other people that want to get into writing or are budding writers? What's the first kind of step to writing a book?
Okay, the first step is you will always do your first draft, always. In fact, your first draft always sounds horrible. I always say, though, just keep going until you get to the final product, and then go through it at least 3 times.
Go through it at least 3 times. Okie dokie. That's good. So that's some good tips. Matt, it's been so lovely talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for sending us the extract of Tombland. We're hoping that we'll have some more of it in the coming weeks as well. And maybe we could do a little bit of a workshop with you about how you write, and we can pull out some more tips for people as well. But we'll say goodbye tonight and catch you soon.
No worries. Thank you. Right, I'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Imagine Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, and Dragon Ball Z mixed into one story and given a metal soundtrack. Now imagine an alternate reality of confusing history, lost stories and creatures, power, money, and the quest for knowledge. Now your reality does not seem so safe, does it? Nothing is what it seems, and everything happens for a reason. You ready for an adventure that will keep you hooked to the pages? Old heroes pass, making room for the new, chasing treasure and monsters hidden from me and you. Buy the paperback and digital version, available now from amazon.co.uk and through the author, Matt Tinkler. More information, character descriptions and monster profiles can be found on the Facebook page and website, the Adventure Born book series. Read it, if you dare.